cut. So when they want to sit there and go, oh, tax cuts for the rich, well, guess what? Tax core for the middle class as well. And guess what? They're also taking less taxes by no tax on overtime to like what? 12,500 for if you're a single person.
If you try to ship our great American jobs and great American factories overseas, then you are going to pay a big fat tariff before you bring that crap back into the United States of America. And that's what President Trump's economic policies are all about, my friends. It's the carrot and the stick. We want to make it easier to build in America. We want to make it harder to build overseas. We want to make it easier to rely on our great American workers because we got a lot of them. American businesses ought to employ American workers. And we want to make it harder to employ foreigners to take those jobs from the Americans who deserve them. And most importantly, if you're working hard every single day right here in the United States, or if you're building a business right here in the United States, you ought to have a tax code that rewards you instead of punishes you. And that's what happened when we passed the working families tax cut just a couple of months ago. And of course, Brian Jack was a critical part of that. So you should be proud of your congressman. Now, what does this law mean for you? What this law means for you is that your take-home pay is going to go up over $10,000 over the next few years. What that means is that if you're working an hour of overtime, the federal government is going to keep its money the hell out of your pocket. Because if you're working hard, the government ought to leave you alone. Ain't that the truth? To any single moms out there,
it'd be nice if the government could take no taxes, but I mean, no tax on overtime, no tax on tips is a start. And they just got around to no tax on Social Security and raised the standard deduction on Social Security. So we're off to a pretty good start.
Any single dads, any people who work hard every single day. I had a single mom, and for a time, my mom worked at a restaurant. She waited tables, like a lot of folks out there. And you know what we did in this new law? We said that if you're working hard and you're making your income via tips, we are not going to tax tips anymore because we want to give everybody out there that's working hard for those tips a little bit of relief. And that's what the working families tax cut did. No matter where you are in this country, if you're working hard and play by the rules, you ought to have a government that stands up for you instead of fights against you. That's why we increased the child tax credit in the working families tax cut. That's why we eliminated taxes on overtime and on tips. And that's why we had the biggest tax cut for families that this country has ever seen, because we believe that you ought to keep more of your hard-earned money. And we believe that if you're busting your rear end every single day, the government ought to make it easier for you and not harder for you. And that's why we fought for that legislation.
I mean, that is true. You cut taxes on the middle class and yeah, people get more, people's income home payment goes up or people's take home pay goes up. Now, for when you cut taxes on the rich, it's easy for them to reinvest, build more factories, offices, and put more jobs out there into the job market.
Now, I am just a vice president. I'm just a lowly politician, but I'm going to try my hand at prophecy today, ladies and gentlemen, because I see the future of the state of Georgia. And in about a year, you are not going to be able to turn on the television without Senator John Ossoff pretending that he supported the working families tax cut when in reality, he voted against it. And I saw a TV clip of him today. You know why he said he voted against no taxes on overtimes? You know why he said he voted against no taxes on tips? You know why he said that he voted to raise your taxes by the biggest amount in a generation in this country? Because he's allegedly worried about people getting kicked off their health care. Well, you know what? The President of the United States made a promise, a sacred promise, that the only people who are going to lose access to health care are illegal aliens who shouldn't be in this country to begin with.
Let's just stay out. I mean, let's be real. The messaging that the Dems give us is not that people are going to get kicked off the health care, is that people are going to die because they're not on health care. And that we're going to have millions of deaths, hundreds of thousands, to be quite honest, that people that are going to die because of the healthcare requirements and changes. And cut.
Because I happen to believe that Medicaid belongs to American workers and American families. I happen to believe that when you are struggling in this country, we're generous people and we want to help you. But we want to help the people who have the legal right to be in the United States of America. So it's not about kicking people off of health care. It's about kicking illegal aliens the hell out of this country so that we can preserve health care for the American families who need it. And that's what the Democrats never talk about. That's what they...
I mean, they also never want to talk about how we do overspend on healthcare. Even though the Dems don't believe in overspending in healthcare, trust me, it's the reality that we live with. We overspend in healthcare.
Never tell you. They'll say, well, Republicans want to do this to healthcare. They want to do that. They want to do all these terrible things. When in reality, if you look at what the Democrats have done, what they've tried to do is to allow millions and millions of illegal aliens into this country, to give them benefits that ought go by right to American citizens, and then to attack Republicans when we dare to stand up for the American citizens who have the right to be here. So when you watch those TV commercials in a year, and John Ossoff, I tell you, he's going to pretend to be a reasonable moderate. He's actually going to run TV advertisements, I promise you, because I ran against a guy like this in the state of Ohio, where he says that he supported President Trump's agenda. But in reality, while John Ossoff pretends to be a moderate, when he comes to Atlanta, he is a far left liberal in Washington, D.C., and that's the only place that it actually counts if you're a United States senator. So why don't we ask John Ossoff, why did you vote to raise taxes? Why did you vote to keep illegal aliens on Medicaid? Why did you vote to bankrupt Medicare? Why did you vote to make sure that people who work overtime and earn their income from tips pay as much to the federal government as possible? And the simple answer is because John Ossoff, whatever he pretends to be in his television commercials, he doesn't give a damn about the 3rd District, and he doesn't give a damn about the people of Georgia, but we do, and we're going to fight for you every single day.
You know what? I do be hearing the arguments of, well, if we don't take out those taxes on tips and overtime, how are we going to fund our social programs that, well, the freeloaders or the lazy like to feed off of? And that's the problem. I don't think the Dems realize that. Well, the American people are kind of tired of feeding on, well, kind of tired of letting people feed off them, tired of being a taxpayer who are letting, well, the lazy or the unambitious, and instead of the unfortunate, take their taxpayer dollars and do BS with it. I'm being quite honest with you. Like, yes, we're all for the giving it for the unfortunate, the elderly to get care, the unfortunate or the low income to get food services. But then we just got a lot of lazy people and then also illegals on there that just is not supposed to be on there at all. And let's be real, it kind of like takes away services from American people who may need it. But for some reason, I don't know why, but Dems did not care about that for the last 4 years.
Let me just leave you, my friends, with a final thought. I want to thank you all for being out here. And again, thank the folks behind me, the great workers of this facility. And I'll take a few questions. Should I take a few questions from the media? Okay, I'll do that. So we'll take a few questions from our great reporters, hopefully some local reporters back there, but I'm sure some national fake news as well. But, you know, I went to Union Station in Washington, D.C. yesterday. Anybody here ever been to Union Station? Okay. It's a beautiful, beautiful building, really a monument to American greatness. I was walking around, I was looking up at it, these beautiful high ceilings. It looks like something out of a fairy tale. And I remember that 2 years ago, when I took my kids to Washington, D.C.'s Union Station, I actually had a crazy person screaming at my 3-year-old kid. Because for some reason, and I never understood this, American leaders decided it was compassionate to allow people to fester on the streets, yelling at our young families instead of giving them the medical care that they need and getting them off the streets.
No, I remember when they said it's compassionate to give these guys a place to get clean needles. That was hilarious. I was like, yo, y'all are crazy.
Which, by the way, makes it easier for us to all enjoy these great public spaces in our country. And I haven't been to Atlanta in a little while, at least now with the Secret Service detail. I haven't walked around Atlanta in a little while. But I bet that as great as Atlanta is, and as beautiful of an American city as it is, there are places in Atlanta where you wouldn't take your family today. Is that correct? Just like in Washington, D.C., the national capital of the greatest nation in the history of the world, there are no-go zones where you would not take a young family or you would not take young children. And that's true, I'm sure, all across the state of Georgia, all across our country, because our leaders decided that they would make our streets safe for criminals instead of safe for the people who pay our taxes and keep our communities going. And I think that of all the things that I'm most proud of the president, the thing that I'm most proud about is that he finally put the government to work for the people who actually make this country function and run in the first place. We're cutting taxes for American taxpayers. We're securing the border. We've got 99% reduction in illegal border crossings in this country because we got a president who empowered Border Patrol to keep us safe. And we got a president who's standing with law enforcement to make it easier to clean up our streets, to make them safe for our young families. If you're a person, I don't care what your political party is, but if you're a family and you want to take your kid to a nice meal in downtown Atlanta, it's about a 40-minute drive. Take your kid to a nice meal in downtown Atlanta, you ought to be able to without being harassed by a criminal. We got to take America's streets back for the American people.
Okay, now downtown Atlanta, now he got a good point. Downtown Atlanta is reckless, but it's a very high net worth area. But there's a lot of crime because there's a lot of rich people, and it's a party area. These rich people get drunk, go to their car, vulnerable moments. Somebody come up and rob them. I mean, it happens a lot in downtown Atlanta because everybody there just, I mean, if you live in there, you definitely got money. And if you're going around there, out there in the nightlife, you got money. So these are targets that are just always available in downtown Atlanta.
And that's what the president of the United States is doing every single day.
I know a little something about Atlanta.
And as a person who grew up in a family where we often struggled with money, you know, it is never the rich people that lack public safety in this country. When we go to war against our cops, when we flood the border with illegal immigration, when we close down great American factories, it is the people the Bible calls the least of us that struggle the most and hurt the most. So I'm proud to be here as your vice president. I'm proud to be here as a representative.
Oh, guys, we got 500 plus y'all in here, man. Do me a favor and double tap that screen and like the video. Appreciate the support, by the way. But let's get more people on the conversation by double tapping that screen.
President Trump. Thank you. But I'm most proud that we have an administration that is making it easier, whether you're rich or poor, to walk down the street with a semblance of public safety. I'm most proud that we're fighting for the jobs of the people behind me and the jobs of every single working person in this country, and we're fighting to make sure that you pay low taxes instead of a bunch of garbage to the federal government. I'm proud that we serve an administration that cares more about American citizens and our public safety than giving Medicaid and Medicare to illegal aliens, which is what John Ossoff wants to do. In other words, I'm proud that the kind of family that made me who I am finally has a representative and a fighter in Washington, D.C. I promise you, we'll keep on fighting for you every step of the way. God bless you, and thank you for having me. Thank you. The Trump tax. A few local media questions first, and then we can get to the national folks.
Let's get it.
Semper Fi, sir. God bless you. I think we have a microphone back there. If we could pass around. Sir, go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, I'm Richard Elliott with WSB TV here in Atlanta. You've heard the criticism from Democrats that making the Trump tax cuts permanent comes at a cost to Medicare, SNAP benefits, and other things like that. How would you answer some of those criticisms by the Democrats?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that question. Look, there are a couple of responses to that criticism. First of all, the only people that we say should not get free government health care benefits are illegal aliens and those who refuse to try to even look for a job. It's very common sense. We want,
yeah.
And look,
Here's the thing, it's not even about looking for a job. I mean, you could be volunteering somewhere, like, I don't know, like at your church, somewhere in the community, like out nursing home. Yes, and that'll be a way to keep your Medicaid as well. Just work 80 hours a month, 20 hours a week, volunteering or working, having a job. And I mean, having a job is better because then you're putting into the same system that you're taking out of.
We are going to bankrupt this country if we keep on giving the people's benefits, the people's Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security benefits to illegal aliens who have no legal right to be in this country and never paid into the system to begin with. That is never the design of those programs, is to give them to every person all over the world. They ought by right to belong to the American citizens who paid into those programs to begin with. And that's what we're fighting to make sure happens. And the second response I'd say to that is look, we did a lot in this legislation. Brian worked on it. The other representatives here worked very hard on this to make sure that a lot of our rural hospitals are struggling because of some of the policies of the Biden administration. So what we did is we put a lot of resources and a lot of changes in regulations to make it possible for our rural hospitals to stay open despite what the Biden administration did to them for 4 years. So our policy is very simple. Whether you're in a big city or a small town, we're going to fight for your access to health care. Whether you're an American.
Yeah, one of the biggest complaints about the $930 billion cut to Medicaid that's going to be carried out over the next 10 years was that, what about the rural hospitals? And they solved that problem. They pretty much said, all right, well, we'll dedicate $25 billion to these rural hospitals. And now that pretty much gives our Medicaid spending to about $800 to $900 billion a year.
American citizen who's been here for 70 years or an American citizen who's been here for 2 years, we're going to fight for your access to a government that serves you. But if you're an illegal alien, you do not deserve government-paid health care benefits. You need to get out of our country, and that's as simple as that. Next question.
Mr. Vice President, Greg Bluestein with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Thanks for being here. I have a follow-up to Richard's great question on those healthcare funding cuts. There are Georgia Republican leaders who are legitimately concerned that more than 100,000 people could be knocked off the Medicaid rolls, not just people who are here undocumented or illegally, but people who are working class, who are struggling to get their health care. What message do you have for state Republican leaders on what they should do to reconcile those issues?
Well, the first thing I'd say is the state Republican leaders and frankly, state Democratic leaders, if you're worried about American citizens losing access.
Okay, now shout out to my man Jay. Says the legislation established a $50 billion rural health transformation program, funding distributing $10 billion per year from 2026 to 2030. So you're right. So shout out to my man Maine. Yeah, it was $50 billion a year, $50 billion for a rural health transformation program, funding disbursing about $10 billion per year for rural hospitals.
To healthcare, the Trump administration always has an open door policy. And we worked with a number of our colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, at the federal legislature, but also at the state level to make it possible to ensure that American citizens have access to the medical benefits that they need. It's as simple as that. So you're always going to have an open door. Now, we understand that reforms are complicated. Sometimes this stuff takes time to work itself through the system. Many of the changes in the working families tax cuts to Medicare, to Medicaid, you're not going to see that stuff. It's not even, some of it doesn't even go to effect for 6 or 7 years, in part.
And to give you just a little bit more information, just in case you're really concerned about rural hospitals, I know a lot of my viewers live in those rural areas. Half of the $25 billion is distributed equally among all states, which approve applications regardless of number of financial conditions of rural hospitals in each state. The remaining half, $25 billion, is allocated based on a formula that considers the state's rural population and the number of rural health facilities and hospitals servicing a high proportion of low-income patients. And that is how it will be dispersed among the rural hospitals. I mean, shout out those guys. And all right, shout out to my man Don Primo. He says Democrats have lost 2 million voters to Republicans who gained over 2 million new voters. Look it up. People no longer believe the Democratic lies or the Democrat lies. And shout out to my man Don, because he's not lying. I also seen the same statistic. I think it was on CNN, like that statistician on CNN, that got to be kind of like, he works for CNN, but he makes the Dems look stupid and make them look bad. Yeah, I like that guy. But He's the one that gave out that statistic on, yo, y'all lost 2 million voters. There's barely any trust in the Democratic Party. Only trust you guys got is the radicals. And here's the problem: a lot of the Democratic Party is kind of leaning towards the center now. Even the guys that was supporting the radicals are running towards the center.
Because we want to give enough time to work with people to make sure that American citizens do not lose access to those critical benefits. So if you look at the way we design the law, if you look at the way that those reforms are implemented, and if you look at all the other things that we're doing, we want to work with people to make sure that American citizens get what they're entitled to. What we do not want is people who have no legal right to be here, to benefit from the generosity of the American taxpayer, and to bankrupt those programs. So long as you're willing to work with us on those goals, we'll work with anybody, whether you got a D or an R next to your name, because we care about this country. We want to make sure it's secure and healthy.
Shout out to Paractuous. He says, as a progressive, all right, cool. He says, as a progressive, I actually like Vance. He grew up in a poor rural Appalachia and became a tech leader through education and training. I like him. I will be voting to advance with Vance in 2020. As a progressive, I am like low-key shocked. Like, wait, what? What? No, I agree with you, but what? Shout out, bro. Yeah, you kind of threw me off with that one. Shout out to my man Vladstein. He says Cracker Barrel removed the cracker and the barrel from the logo. Next thing, I bet they'll be coming out with vegan pot roast and vegan biscuits and gravy. Yeah, I did see how they took the white guy and the barrel. I was like, come on now. Y'all can keep that white guy in the barrel. I mean, look, if you was going to take the white guy in the barrel off, you can't even call it Cracker Barrel no more. How you going to take the logo away?
Next question. We had a couple hands back here, but okay, we got a school back there. We do. Okay, well, let's get them a microphone.
My name is Virgil Garrett. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Of course, thank you.
I'm here with the Central Educational Center, CCS-TV. The CEC is a college and career academy focused on training high school students to enter technical and trade industries. Can you tell us how the big, beautiful bill will impact us and our prospective jobs? And also, how is the administration focusing on schools like ours?
So tell me,
good question.
You say your name was Virgil? Virgil, tell me a little bit more about your school.
So Central Educational Center, we have classes focusing on trade and other industries. We have audio, video, aviation, cosmetology, dentistry, and students have
Got it. Okay, thank you. He asked me, Virgil, you asked me to comment on the school. I figured I should learn a little bit about it. I should learn a little bit about it before I commented on it, but I appreciate the clarification there. I mean, our proposal and our principle in the Trump administration is quite simple. We want Americans to be able to pursue their American dream. Whether that means going to a trade school or going to a four-year education, going to the military, we want to give you as many options as possible. And what happened for a long time in this country is that you had both parties, both sets of leaders saying, no. The only pathway that we're going to fund, the only pathway we're going to help you with is if you want to get a four-year degree. If you want to get a four-year degree, great. But if you want to be a plumber.
I will say this, though. Look, you can't try to inspire the American youth to get a four-year degree where you're going to try to replace them with an H-1 visa guy who went to India in a tech program for only 2 years, while our youth got to go through there for 4 years, and these guys get picked over them. I mean, if that's what y'all going to do, then y'all might as well make these tech programs like trade schools, like 6 months to 2 years. I mean, if that's what y'all going to do.
Or an electrician or a pipe fitter, your government ought to fight for you too. And that's exactly what we want to make happen. And I do, Virgil, part of that is policy. Part of that is making sure that things like Pell Grants and other federal benefits, they don't pick and choose. They don't discriminate against our great trade schools. But part of that is leadership. And I think it's important for those of us who are in positions of leadership to say that.
Which is wild because, I mean, that's how they be able to put you more into debt. Well, not the Pell Grants, but these student loans. Yeah, that's how they put you more into debt right there, is they kind of force you to go to these four-year colleges, which you're going to acquire more debt instead of these two-year colleges, two-year trade schools. You go in there, you get your certificate, and you're ready to go. Your hands-on experience and all that, or at least with the, internship or apprenticeship in y'all cases.
there are so many great careers. So many great careers that require you use your hands and your head at the same time, where you can earn a great living. You can build something great for your fellow citizens and people in your community. We're not going to have enough housing. We're not going to have plumbing that works. We're not going to have lights that turn on unless we've got enough people going into our trade schools. We got to have more kids doing it, more young people doing it, because they're the ones building the American dream of homeownership. They're the ones building the future, and we're going to fight for you every step of the way. Thank you for your question.
Yep. And that'll work out just fine. As long as we don't let illegals to come in to undermine their wages, everything will work out just fine.
And let's do a few more questions here, and then I'm going to have to hit the road. Sir. Where have we got a microphone?
Vice President, Raul Valley, WABE Radio here in Atlanta. Wanted to ask you about something, your final topic on safety. Do you see the administration putting soldiers in the city of Atlanta?
Well, look, what we've done is we have focused on Washington, D.C. because it's a federal city under our jurisdiction, but we certainly...
Shout out to Preactorus. He says, you'd be surprised, man. I'm a Bernie guy. Okay, I used to be a Bernie guy back in the day in my college days. He says, I supported him in 2016. Yeah, just like, back in my college days, like me. Democrats lost me with the overly woke culture war stuff that pushed me towards the GOP. I think the parties flipped again. I mean, yeah, here's the thing, though. I mean, on the right, it's kind of like they have this warmongering mentality toward the Middle East. But on the left, they have this warmongering mentality towards Russia. And it's kind of crazy because the left is like, they have that warmongering mentality towards a nuclear superpower, which is wild. But hey, I mean, sometimes you got to pick and choose between your warmongering parties, which I do hope in the future does kind of die out, like the old generation die out, and we're not going to be so war hungry. At least, though, hopefully the newer generation won't be so warmongering or such neocons and neoliberals, and we'll try to move on more peaceful times in the world. Hopefully, while maintaining a strong military, of course, because that's the only way we're going to maintain that.
Hope that whether it's Atlanta or anywhere else, people are going to look around and say, we don't have to live like this. It turns out if you just go and arrest the bad guys, you can have cities and streets that are safe again. And we hope that people see what we're doing in Washington, D.C. and follow our example all across the country. I'm a big fan. Look, I grew up in a small town. I love our beautiful countryside and our rural areas, but I love our big cities too. And I want you to be able to go shopping or go and get a nice meal with your family without the fear that you're going to get mugged or even worse, because you had the audacity to take your family out for a day in one of our great American cities. We don't have to live like this. All we need is politicians who actually care more about public safety for American citizens than they do for violent criminals. In Washington, D.C., in 10 days of what Donald Trump has done in Washington, D.C., did you know armed robberies are down 55% in our nation's capital? It's amazing. Murders in Washington, D.C. are down over 35%. Again, that's in a week and a half of just taking crime seriously. And there's something, Democrats had this weird sickness in the head 5-6 years ago, where they decided that...
I will be real, though. Crime was already down from 2023 to 2024, and it was heading in that downward, in that downward motion. They were still trying to get to pre-COVID levels. They didn't get to pre-COVID levels yet, but when they hit that skyrocket crime rate, I'm talking about DC in 2023. That's what they're talking about. Oh, well, it dramatically got better. I know, because y'all hit a high score, and now y'all coming down from it. And yes, that is like 50% better than where they were in 2023. But let's be honest, though, they're still not at pre-COVID level. They're still not at normancy. Well, when it comes to their crime, of course.
All law enforcement was racist. You know who suffers the most, especially in our urban areas, when you don't allow the police to enforce the laws against bad guys? It is the good citizens, disproportionately Black Atlantans, who suffer the most from high violent crime. Because you've got more, or at least a disproportionate number of Black Georgians living in Atlanta compared to other places. So when you empower police to prosecute violent criminals, that's not racism. That's empowering everybody, Black or white, to live safely in their communities. And that should be the God-given right of every American citizen to walk down the street in safety and comfort. God bless you, sir. Next question.
President, thank you for answering our
I don't know. So we can all be real and also say that as our capital, as DC, it being the capital, it should low-key have like the lowest crime rate in the country, in the world, it being the United States capital. Just saying.
questions. I'm Doug Reardon with Atlanta News First. I know you're here to talk about business and manufacturing. I
Yes,
wanted
sure.
to ask you about the spending bill's impact on individuals. There was a nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office report that came out last week showing that the bottom 10%, the poorest Americans, would lose about $1,200, a year on their income, while the top 10%,
Really?
they would add about $13,000 annually to their income. Can you justify for those poorest Americans those differences?
Shout out to Preactoris. He's coming in again saying crime wasn't down. NBC had articles weeks ago to like a month ago where the DC police launched an internal investigation that district commanders were fudging the numbers and reclassifying crimes. Okay, now I did hear about the reclassifying crimes, and I just did hear about a trusted official in the police force was pretty much saying that as well, but it wasn't investigated until now, or maybe like a week ago. So yeah, you are right about that. We don't even know if the actual numbers are real, that the crime actually went down due to reclassification and possible or alleged fudging of the numbers.
Well, first of all, the Congressional Budget Office,
That is
sometimes they put out reports that are absolutely.
But I kind of want to wait for the confirmation before I just go ahead and stamp it and be like, you grimy bastards, well, you knew you were lying. Before I do all that, I want confirmation.
Atrocious, and I think this is a good example of a very atrocious report. The most important thing for people who are living at the bottom of the income ladder is that they not pay taxes on their income sources. So if you're working hard and you're working overtime, you're going to get a big fat tax cut. If you're working at a restaurant or some other business where you're earning your wages primarily through tips, you're going to get a big fat tax cut. And most importantly, the president's economic policies are going to prevent your job from being shipped off to Asia or to Mexico.
Every time I think about no tax on tips, like, excuse me for the the vulgarity of it, but I don't know. I be thinking of strippers like every time. I'd be like, the people who are going to benefit the most is people in the entertainment industry or the nightlife services, bottle girls, like bartenders and strippers, who didn't get all of their income in tips. So all of that is tax free. Well, until a certain extent, to that 12,000 mark, I believe. Y'all strippers best get married. It extends a little bit for you.
That is the very best thing for people at the bottom of the income ladder. And that's why we have the economic policies that we do. If you go back 50, 60 years, what is the fastest period for blue collar wages rising in the United States of America? It is the time that we are living in right now, thanks to the economic policies of Donald J. Trump. You know what the worst thing for people at the bottom of the income ladder is? It's when you flood the country with millions upon millions of illegal aliens and force our poor Americans to compete for jobs against low-wage foreigners who don't even have the legal right to be here. That is what destroys the wages and the livelihoods of people who are struggling in this country. We want to empower them to live the American dream. That's why we're protecting their jobs, lowering their taxes, and fighting to make their country safe again. And I'll do one more question.
Sir, I'm George Cheedy. I write for The Guardian. I live in a small town, less than 1,000 people. I'm also a military veteran. I am a Infos trained killer just like you.
Thank you for your service, George.
In 1996 in Atlanta, when the
I think he was just in the photography. I don't think JD Vance was in any combat, but okay.
Olympics was coming through, Atlanta very famously rounded up people who were homeless on the street downtown, bought them bus tickets, and sent them out of town and often out of state. There was a lot of negative sentiment about that later. It's one of the things that people remember. I am concerned that in the press to eliminate encampments in DC, something similar to that is happening. What is happening to the people who are homeless, often poor, often have a mental health problem or a drug problem? Where are they actually going when these encampments are being broken?
So first of all, George, I was 12 years old when the 1996 Summer Games happened in Atlanta, so I don't remember exactly the background there. I was worried about football and fishing and doing all the things that a 12-year-old in Southwestern Ohio was worried about. But I think that the question betrays a certain misunderstanding of what we're trying to do and what is the nature of real compassion. I talked earlier about my son being harassed at Union Station a couple of years ago. Now, first, as a father, you have some vagrant screaming crazy stuff. I'm sure a lot of us have had this experience where you have some vagrant screaming crazy stuff at your 3-year-old. As a father, my first reaction is grab my son closer, make sure that he's safe. Okay, then you realize the person's not going to maybe run and charge and attack us. We'll just keep our distance. But then you think, wait a second, why have we convinced ourselves that it's compassionate to allow a person who's obviously a schizophrenic or suffering from some other mental illness? Why is it compassionate to let that person fester in the streets? You see them, they're
yeah.
A lot of them.
I mean, we let them fester in the streets, but under Biden, we was low-key letting illegals come in and giving them EBT cards and hotel stays, on the American dollar. Like, let's be real. They was living a good life. But we couldn't even do that for our homeless. Crazy. I mean, all that money we spent on them, I mean, we could have put half of them through rehab. I mean, let them stay in those little hotels and maybe got them a job. Maybe.
Have clear mental health issues. A lot of them have clear physical health issues. They're not properly clothed. They're not properly cared for. Some of them are wasting away. The compassionate thing is to have people who are having mental health crises, to get them in treatment, not to let them sit on the streets and yell at our people while they're walking by. And so the president actually signed an executive order to make it easier for some of these people to get access to mental health treatment. And I don't know for the life of me what happened in this country where we decided that the compassionate thing was to let somebody fester on the streets instead of get the treatment that they need. It's very simple to me. And I don't know why we accept it as parents and as grandparents and as people who just want to walk down the street in comfort, why we accepted that it was reasonable to have crazy people yelling at our kids. You should not have to cross the street in downtown Atlanta to avoid a crazy person yelling at your family. Those are your streets, paid for with your tax dollars, and you ought to be able to use them like any other citizen of this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. But downtown Atlanta is where those robbers go to target, wealthy individuals.
So let me close. I know I said that was the last question. So let me just close with this thought. There are a number of things I could say about President Trump's leadership and a number of things I could say about what we're trying to accomplish in the Trump administration. Put very simply, we're trying to make America great for Americans again. When you hear that phrase, make America great, we want you as a taxpayer, as a worker, as a business owner, we want you to be able to enjoy the incredible benefits and bounty of the United States of America. This country was built by your grandparents, by your parents, by your forebears. You ought to have the right to live a good life in this country that wouldn't even exist were it not for the hard work of so many generations who came before us. They didn't put in that work. They didn't build this great country. They didn't carve the greatest civilization in the history of the world out of a wilderness so that their ancestors and their descendants could see it fall into disrepair. They did not build, look at Atlanta. It's a beautiful city. It's one of the most beautiful cities anywhere in the world. The people who built Atlanta did not build it so that you would not be able to walk down the streets of Atlanta safely at night. They built it so that you could enjoy it. They built this country so that we could make an even greater America out of it. And the policies of the Trump administration are meant for one simple reason: to empower you to live a great life in this country that all of us love. We've got a lot of work done in the last 7 months. We're going to do a hell of a lot more work in the next 3.5 years, and we're going to fight for you every single step of the way. God bless you, and thank you for having me here in Peachtree City.
Now, let's go ahead and get on to J.D. Vance's interview, though, on Fox News. And we're going to do not the whole thing, but half of it.
So I've actually never met Putin. The president did that.
Well, there we go.
Security agreement. My question to you is, Why should America carry the lion's share of the burden from now until Lord knows when Europe has the money to defend itself?
Well, I don't think we should carry the burden here. I think that we should be helpful if it's necessary to.
Oh, I do make the point. Like, what you mean? Europe rather spend on their social services than defending themselves. I mean, that's what the whole NATO thing was for, in a way. Is like, hey, they kind of get the lax on military spending while providing social services to their people, like, healthcare for all, free internet, cool stuff.
Stop the war and to stop the killing. But I think that we should expect, and the president certainly expects, Europe to play the leading role here. And what he said very clearly is, look, the United States is open to having the conversation, but we're not going to make commitments until we figure out what's going to be necessary to stop the war in the first place. And I think that it's, the president is very good. He never takes anything off the table. He never puts anything fully on the table because he doesn't want to give away his leverage. And this is the private conversation that we're all going to have about what's necessary to stop the war. Yeah. But no matter what happens, no matter what form this takes, the Europeans are going to have to take the lion's share of the burden. It's their continent, it's their security, and the president's been very clear they're going to have to step up here.
What's it like meeting Putin? What was he like, just one-on-one?
So I've actually never met Putin. The president did that meeting. I've talked to him on the phone a number of times. It's interesting. He's more soft-spoken than you would necessarily expect. The American media has a particular image of him. He's soft-spoken in a certain way. He's very deliberate. He's very careful. And I think fundamentally, he's a person who looks out for the interests, as he sees it, of Russia. And I think one of the reasons he respects the president of the United States is because he knows the president looks out for the interests of the American people. And while they often disagree about issues, and obviously the president has been very critical of Vladimir Putin, the president's also willing to work with anybody if he thinks it's going to accomplish an important goal for America. And we all agree an important goal is to stop the killing.
Let's move to the economy, because that is still the number one issue in the United States for most voters.
Sure.
The Democrats seem to be banking on an economic downturn, just like they seem to be banking on chaos in the streets against the National Guard.
Sure.
How do you see the economy in the next 6 months as we're seeing some continuing uncertainty regarding interest rates and Jerome Powell?
Well, unfortunately, you have the Democrats. I think they really are betting against the United States. We're betting on the United States and the American people. There are a lot of good things happening in the economy. You have a lot of new investment coming in part because of the tariffs. People are trying to avoid the tariffs by building in the United States, which is their whole point, Laura, and why the president has been right about this issue.
And shout out Misfit Supervisor. Appreciate the support. Make sure to follow her channel. And how's it going, sis? I want to hear them address the home/rent prices. I mean, yeah, mortgage. Yeah, those, mortgages will also, be nice as well. Those interest rate on mortgages and house prices. You're right. Now, it all depends on what state you're living in, too, and what you're dealing with. Because, man, if you're like in places like New York, I mean, rent is sky high. California, rent is ridiculous. But I mean, in red states like mine, I mean, rent's honestly pretty moderate. It's like not that bad.
Issue from the beginning. You see blue collar wages rising at their fastest rate in 50, 60 years. You see inflation cooling off, though there's still a lot of work to do there. So I feel very good about where the economy is. You can never predict the future. But I think what people all over the world recognize is that it's a time to build in the United States of America. If you want to build a car, you want to build a car manufacturing facility, if you want to build a next generation technology facility, if you want to build houses, whatever you want to do, we are the place to do business.
How about rare earths and magnets, which is what we're dependent on with China, which gives them an enormous amount of leverage over us.
And that's something the president has really directed the entire team to fix that issue, because whether it's rare earth magnets or pharmaceuticals, he wants the United States to depend on Americans. We should not be in a situation where foreign adversaries or competitors have control over critical parts of our economy. Think about this, Laura. God forbid Americans are in some sort of conflict and we can't get antibiotics.
Oh, shoot. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and put a rush on it then. All right, guys. Shout out to my man Vlad. He says, the most dangerous Carl Jung for psychological sign. Jung. Not Carl Jung, but Jung.